The Great Gilly Hopkins, Chapter 9. POW. There was a fight between Trotter and Miss Ellis, and Gilly heard the sounds of battle in the living room when she came in from school the next afternoon. Never, never, never! Trotter was bellowing like an old cow deprived of its calf. Gilly stopped still in the hallway, closing the door without a sound. Mrs. Trotter, nobody at the agency looks at it as any indication of failure on your part. You think I care what that agency thinks? You're one of our most capable foster parents, Trotter. You've been with us for more than 20 years. This won't affect your record with us. You're too valuable. I don't give a spit about no record. You ain't taking Gilly. No, Trotter, we're trying to think of you. No, you ain't. If you was thinking of me, you'd never come to me with such a fool notion. This is a troubled child, Mamie. She needs special... No, I ain't giving her up. Never, never. Well, if you won't think of yourself, will you think of William Ernest? He's come too far in the last year to let... Well, I've seen myself how she upsets him. It was William Ernest got her to come home last night. Trotter's voice was square and stubborn. Because he saw how upset you were. That's because he saw how upset you were, Trotter. That doesn't mean that she can't damage him. William Ernest lived with me for over 2 years. He's going to make it. I know he is. Sometimes, Miss Ellis, you got to walk on your heel and favor your toe, even if it makes your heel a little sore. Trotter, I don't understand what you're driving at. Well, somebody's got to favor Gilly for a little while. That girl long overdue. That's exactly it, Mrs. Trotter. I'm quite aware of Gilly's needs. I've been her caseworker for nearly 5 years now, and whether you believe it or not, I really care about her. But I don't think it's her needs that we're talking about right now, is it? What do you mean? It's your needs, she said very quietly. A silence, and then, yes, Lord knows I need that child. A funny broken sound like a sob came from Trotter. I'd like to die when I found her gone. You can't do that, Mrs. Trotter. You can't let them tear you to pieces. Don't you try to tell a mother how to feel. You're a foster mother, Mrs. Trotter. Miss Ellis's voice was firm. You can't afford to forget that. Gilly's whole body was engulfed in a great aching. She opened and slammed the front door, pretending to just have come in. This time they heard her. That you, Gilly, honey? She went to the doorway of the living room, and both women were on their feet, flushed as though they had been running a race. Well, Gilly, Miss Ellis began, her voice glittering like a fake Christmas tree. Miss Ellis was just saying how it's up to you, Gilly. There was a flash of alarm from the social worker, which Trotter pretended not to see. You want to stay on here with William Ernest and me? That's fine. If you want her to find you someplace else, that's fine too. You got to be the one to decide, Gilly. Her eyes shifted uneasily towards Miss Ellis. What about... Gilly asked, her mouth going dry as a stale soda cracker. What about my real mother? Miss Ellis's eyebrows jumped. I wrote her, Gilly, several months ago when we decided to move you from the Nevinses. She never answered me. She wrote me. She wants me to come out there. Miss Ellis looked at Trotter. Yeah, I know about the postcard, the caseworker said. Those damn cops reading people's mail and blabbing, passing it around, snickering over it probably. Gilly, Gilly, if she really wanted you with her... She does. She wants me. She said so. Then, Gilly, why hasn't she come to get you? A hard edge had come into Miss Ellis's voice, and her eyebrows were twitching. Gilly, it's been over 8 years. Even when she lived close by, she never came to see you. It's different now. Wasn't it? She's gonna come. She really wants me. Doesn't she? Trotter came over to her and laid her arm heavily on Gilly's shoulder. Gilly, honey, if she knowed you, if she just knowed what a girl she has, she'd be here in 1 minute. Oh, Trotter, don't be a fool. If she knew what I was like, she'd never come. It takes someone stupid like you, Gilly thought to herself, and she removed herself gently from under the weighty embrace and addressed herself to Miss Ellis, eye to eyebrow. Till she comes, Miss Ellis? Until my mother comes for me? I guess I'll just stay here with Trotter. Trotter wiped her face with her big hand and snuffled. Well, I'll be sure we'll be seeing you sometime, Miss Ellis. The social worker wasn't going to be swept out quite so easily, and she set her feet apart as though fearing Trotter might try to remove her bodily and said, Officer Ryan tells me that when he called you, you had over $100 with you. Yeah? It came out sassy, but Miss Ellis just squinted her eyes and went on. Gilly, it's hard to believe that that was all your money. So? So, I call taking other people's money stealing, Miss Hopkins. Yeah? Trotter patted Gilly's arm as if to shush her. And so do we, Miss Ellis. Surely you don't think this is the first time something like this has happened to me over the last 20 years? No, I know it's not. Then how about trusting me to handle it? Miss Ellis shook her head and smoothed her pantsuit down over her rump before she put on her coat. I'll be in close touch with you. Trotter nearly shoved her out the front door. We gonna do just fine. Don't you worry your pretty little head about it, Miss Ellis. Miss Trotter, I get paid to worry. Trotter smiled impatiently and closed the door quickly, and when she turned back towards Gilly, her face was like Mount Rushmore stone. Gilly blinked in surprise at the sudden and absolute change. I don't take lightly to stealing, you know. Gilly nodded. No use pretending sassiness. I figure that money ain't all mine, am I right? Well, where'd you get it? I found it, Gilly said softly. Trotter came over and with two hands she lifted Gilly's face to look up into her own. I said, where'd you get it, Gilly? I found it behind some books next door. Trotter dropped her hands in disbelief. You stole from Mr. Randolph? It was just lying there behind the books. He probably didn't even... Gilly, you stole it, don't you? Put no fancy name on it. It was his and you took it, right? I guess so. How much? Don't fool with me, girl. How much? $44, Gilly said miserably. Well, you got to take it back to him. I can't. Trotter stood there, hands on her hips, staring at her until Gilly continued. I gave $5 to Agnes Stokes. Oh, you did, huh? Gilly nodded. Well, I'm going to lend you the $5 to pay back Mr. Randolph, and you going to work it off. Giving back Mr. Randolph's money was not as bad as it might have been. The old man apparently had no idea that there had been any money behind his books. Either he'd forgotten, or it had been put there by his wife, who's dead long before Trotter's Melvin. At any rate, when Gilly gave the $44 to him, Trotter looming behind her like a mighty army, he accepted her mumbled explanation without showing shock or undue curiosity, but with a strange little dignity. Thank you, he said, for once not doubling the phrase. He put the money in his pocket, rubbed his hands together briefly, and then put out his hand to be led to supper. Gilly hesitated for a moment, waiting for the sermon that was bound to pour forth, if not from him, surely from Trotter. But neither one of them spoke, so she took Mr. Randolph's hand instead of his elbow as she usually did. Well, it was kind of a way for her to say thank you. Trotter had obviously never heard of either the minimum wage or the child labor laws. She posted the following sign in the kitchen. Washing dishes and cleaning kitchen, 10 cents. Vacuuming downstairs, 10 cents. Cleaning both bathrooms, including the floors, 10 cents. Dusting, 10 cents. Helping William Ernest with schoolwork for 1 hour, 25 cents. You can clearly see what's important to Trotter. Gilly began to spend a lot of time with W.E., and she discovered several things. One was, the boy was not as dumb as he looked. If you held back and you didn't press him, he could often figure out things for himself. But when you crowded him, he would choke right up. And if you laughed at him, he'd throw up his hands as if to protect his head from a blow. It finally occurred to Gilly that he really thought she was going to smack him every time he made a mistake. Side note, this was the first indication to the reader that William Ernest was probably taken away from his family for child abuse. And that's why he's with Trotter. Which was why, of course, Trotter tiptoed around that boy as though he would shatter at the least commotion, and why she was death on anybody she caught fooling around with him. But it wasn't going to work. W.E. wasn't some fluted antique cup in Mrs. Nevin's china cupboard. He was a kid. He was a foster kid. And if he didn't toughen up, what would happen to him when there was no Trotter around to look after him? So, Gilly asked him, "Hey, what do you do when someone socks you on?" His squinty little eyes went wild behind the glasses. "I'm not going to hit you. I was just wondering, what do you do?" He stuck his right index finger into his mouth and began to tug at the nail. She took the finger out and studied his stubby-nailed hand for a minute. "There's nothing wrong with these, I can see." "W, you ever think of smacking them back?" He shook his eyes wide-eyed. "Well, you gonna go through life letting people pick on you?" He hung his head, and the finger went back in. "Look, William Ernest." She bent over close to his ear and whispered hoarsely into it. "I'm going to teach you how to fight. No charge, nothing. Then when some big punk comes up to you and tries to start something with you, you can just let him have it." His finger dropped from his mouth as he stared at her. Unbelieving. "Did you hear about how I fought 6 boys one day, all by myself?" He nodded solemnly. "Before I get through with you, you're going to be doing the same thing. Pow, 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 pow." She landed 6 imaginary punches, sending 6 imaginary bullies flying. "Pow?" he echoed softly, tentatively, doubling up his fists and giving a feeble swing. "First thing, when somebody yells at you, don't throw your hands up, W.E." She imitated him. "And you act like they're going to kill you." Pow. He swung his little fist in a kind of question mark. Nah. Not first thing. See, they may not be even meaning to hit you. First thing is, you got to take a deep breath. She filled her diaphragm, and she waited while he tried to imitate her, his ribs poking through his shirt. Then you got to go like this. "Get the hell out of my way!" And before the sentence was out, Trotter was filling the doorway like the wrath of God Almighty. "Oh, okay. W, leave out the hell part. The main thing is, what are you kids doing? I thought I was paying you to help William Ernest with his reading." "No, this is on my time, no charge." Trotter looked anxiously at W.E. He was standing on tiptoe, fists clenched, eyes squeezed shut in his red face, sucking in his huge breath. "Get the hell out of my way!" He turned to Gilly, smiling. "Was that good, Gilly?" Yeah, you better leave the hell part out in front of Trotter. But that was pretty good for a start. Really not bad, W.E. "Gilly," said Trotter. "Look, Trotter, he's got to learn to take care of himself. And I'm the best teacher around." Trotter just went on standing in the doorway as though she couldn't think what to do next. When the little guy marched over to her, put his fists up in front of her huge body, took in a breath and said squeakily, "Get out of my way!" Tears started in the woman's eyes. She threw her arms around W.E. and she bear hugged him. I was just practicing, Trotter. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean you. I know, William Ernest, honey. I know. Trotter, he's got to learn to take care of himself in this world. The big woman wiped her face with her apron and sniffed. Don't I know that, baby? She patted the boy and straightened up. How about you finishing this lesson outside, because I don't believe it's something I want to listen to. Come on, Gilly. William Ernest slid around Trotter and started for the back door. Pow! Pow! And they could hear him exploding softly down the hall. Trotter, I'm not going to teach him to pick on people. I'm just going to teach him how to take care of himself. He can't come hiding behind your skirt every time somebody looks at him cross-eyed. I suppose not. Even real mothers can't watch out for kids the rest of their lives, and you're just his foster mother. Yep, so they keeps telling me. Gilly didn't mean to be cruel, but she needed to make Trotter understand. Trotter, if he knows how to read and he knows how to stick up for himself, he's going to be okay. You got it all figured out, ain't you, Gilly, honey? She relaxed into a smile. Well, I ain't stopping your boxing lessons. I just don't care to watch. Boxing lessons? The woman was a throwback to another century. Gilly started to pass her at the door, but as she brushed by the big old body, Trotter grabbed her and planted a big old kiss on her forehead. One hand went up automatically to wipe the spot, but one look at Trotter's face and Gilly stopped her arm midway. I don't know what got into me, Trotter mumbled, trying to turn it into a joke. I know you don't allow no kissing, but sometimes I just haul off and go crazy. Yeah, it's Sunday school. Miss Applegate calls that demon possession. Oh, does she now? Demon possession, huh? She began to laugh so hard Gilly could feel the boards vibrating under her feet. Demon possession. Oh, mercy, girl. I'll have to catch me a jet to keep one step ahead of you. Well, you better go on out there before the devil grabs me one more time. She waved her hand to land a mock spank on Gilly's behind, but by the time it swept the air, Gilly's bottom, along with the rest of her, was well down the hall. And that's the end of Chapter 9. Gilly Hopkins, the great Gilly Hopkins.